According to the White House, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is scheduled to fly to Washington on Friday. The visit is related to the planned signing of an economic cooperation agreement with the United States. In exchange for access to the Ukrainian raw materials market, the Americans are to provide Ukraine with financing for arms supplies. These were tough negotiations. On the one hand, the aspirations of the US president to convince his constituents to invest further in Ukraine. On the other hand, Kyiv's maintenance of US military support.
And I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy. And it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal, it could be whatever, but it's rare earths and other things. And look, we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on Ukraine and Russia fighting a war that should have never, ever happened. That's a war that would have never happened if I were president.
According to Kyiv, this is the first step. The next is to fix the issue of security guarantees. From the tone of statements by Ukrainian politicians, it is difficult to determine whether such guarantees are a condition for signing the preliminary agreement. There is no agreement yet. That comes next. It would be more difficult, more serious, because the next agreement is about the fund. It will include certain partner relations, money, and so on. This agreement must be ratified in the Ukrainian parliament. Trump has made it clear that the United States will transfer billions of dollars worth of military equipment to Ukraine as part of the deal. As analysts point out, it was Trump who, during his first term, authorized the sale to Ukraine of Javelin anti-tank launchers, which were crucial in the first weeks of fighting in Ukraine following Russia's 2022 invasion. They arrived in Ukraine a couple of years before Russia launched its full-scale invasion of the country, and they were extremely useful in hunting down that famous Russian convoy, or columns of tanks and trucks that were coming from the direction of Belarus. The deal is expected to give the Americans access to the Ukrainian market for the extraction of valuable minerals, which are used to make electronics. No word yet on the scale of such investments, but the sheer fact of possible American entry into the Ukrainian market is important here.
We know that our graphite can be used in high technologies. We're sure about that because we send our graphite in European and US laboratories. They make their own tests. We know that our graphite is possible to convert to graphene. It's the nanotechnologies, and 1 kilogram of graphene can cost thousands and $100,000.
According to Donald Trump, the Ukrainian president is expected to appear in Washington this Friday.
President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement. And I want to thank Howard and Scott for the job you guys did in putting it together. Really did an amazing job. And that'll be on rare earth and other things.
This deal could be very important for US-Ukrainian relations before actual negotiations with Russia begin. It would also be important for Donald Trump to secure possible American interests in Ukraine, and thus an offer of solid security guarantees may be on the table in return. This is what fighting democracy looks like in action. Public enemy number one of the Romanian establishment has been detained by police. Călin Georgescu was on his way to register his candidacy for the repeat presidential election due to be held in early May.
He raised 300,000 signatures for him, and we were supposed to meet at 2 o'clock p.m. Bucharest time. So at this hour we were supposed to meet. He was in traffic, and they took him out of his car and brought him here.
Other people associated with the politician were also detained, and his properties were searched. Georgescu was taken to the Prosecutor General's office for questioning in connection with alleged Russian financing of his election campaign. The point is that both the media and the Romanian tax administration point in a different direction. It turns out that Moscow is not behind Georgescu's campaign, but the Romanian National Liberal Party, a member of the European People's Party political family.
The liberals wanted to be against me, so they paid the campaign on TikTok for Mr. Georgescu. They don't have any proof that Mr. Georgescu had any finance from Russia. If they would have had any proof, they would present it in December.
It was in December, 2 days before the second round of the presidential election, that Romania's constitutional court annulled the results of the first round, which Georgescu unexpectedly won. The mainstream favourite had dropped out of the race entirely. That's when the hunt began for the politician who had succeeded in dismantling the system that had ruled Romania up till now. Today's arrest sparked outrage from Elon Musk, among others. They just arrested the person who won the most votes in the Romanian presidential election. This is messed up. Here, political sympathies have nothing to do with it. The annulment of elections on the basis of questionable evidence is an outrageous picture of the collapse of democracy in a member state of the European Union. Among other topics, the now famous speech by the US Vice President J.D. Vance in Munich was devoted to this.
Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany too.
And if such an option was on the table in Germany, it could just as well happen in any other European country. The Law and Justice Party warns that the December 13th coalition will do everything to twist the presidential election until Donald Tusk's candidate wins.
Pokazujemy ten przykład, który dzisiaj się wydarzył w Rumunii, ku przestrodze.
We share this example that happened today in Romania as a warning to all our compatriots who are fed up with this violation of the law, how far these leftist elite from Brussels can go in their insolence. Nowadays, it is hard to imagine such a scenario, but just a dozen months ago, no one would have imagined strongmen to enter Poland's public TV station, the illegal takeover of the prosecutor's office, or the attempt financially to starve the opposition in defiance of the decisions of the State Election Commission.
W Stanach Zjednoczonych mówi się too big to rig.
In the United States, they say too big to rig, meaning only a big victory will combat a potential big rigging. So we are confident that the candidate supported by our environment will be able to win enough votes to make it difficult for even such bad people to rig these elections. It is worth remembering that the validity of Poland's presidential elections, according to law, is decided by the Supreme Court's Extraordinary Control on Public Affairs Chamber. The December 13th coalition has announced that it will not recognize its rulings.
European elites, together with the Russian dictator and now war criminal Vladimir Putin, have been leading to destabilization of the situation in Europe. This is the conclusion of the former head of the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, Fabrice Leggeri. He was forced to resign from his post in 2022. The European Commissioner at the time, Commissioner Johansson, told me that the job of the border guards was to let all migrants in. You know, the French government, Emmanuel Macron's government in France, was weak, so they actually said I should resign. So I was accused of preventing migrants from crossing the border illegally. Frontex is an independent European Union agency based in Poland that supports the protection of Europe's external borders. Leggeri opposed the opening of the European Union's borders to illegal migrants, who are also expected to enter Poland en masse. Fundamental rights monitors and NGOs told me that with the Frontex budget, I should pay for the buses and transportation of all migrants from Belarus to Lithuania. And they added that if Lithuania is too small, you can also send them to Poland. 4 years ago, the first illegal migrants from the Middle East arrived at the Polish-Belarusian border, displaying exceptional aggression towards Polish soldiers and border guards. Today, we know that Putin's Russia and Belarus were behind this action. The European Commission worked closely with Lukashenko and Putin, who used migration weapons as an element of hybrid warfare to destabilize the EU internally, and they were largely successful. The European Commission acted hand-in-hand with Lukashenko and Putin, or rather with Putin and Lukashenko, because Lukashenko is a lackey. It's shocking that elites from Brussels wanted to destabilize the internal situation in the European Union, including the situation in Poland. Hamas has announced that it has reached an agreement with Israel, breaking the previous deadlock over the exchange of hostages and their bodies for Palestinian prisoners. According to the agreement, it is said that tonight Hamas will hand over the bodies of 4 hostages, and Israel will release 602 Palestinians in return. Israel was originally supposed to release the prisoners as early as Saturday, but Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu halted the exchange, accusing Hamas of violating the terms of the truce by carrying out propaganda actions in the transfer of the hostages and their bodies, among other things. Halting the exchange process threatened to collapse the truce. The tragedy of the Bibas family has grown to symbolism. 2 boys, a 9-month-old and a 4-year-old, as well as their mother, were killed in captivity a few weeks after being kidnapped. Hamas terrorists returned their bodies last week. The father of the boys survived, and this is how he bid them farewell today. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you and couldn't protect you, but I want you to know that I love you very much and miss you very much. I hope you know that I thought about you every day, every minute. I hope you are enjoying paradise. An agreement on the upcoming exchange was reached at talks in Cairo, where Egypt, the U.S., and Qatar mediated the negotiations in an effort to maintain a fragile truce. So far, Hamas has released 25 hostages and handed over 4 bodies, while Israel has released 1,135 Palestinians. We hope that the second phase of the agreement will be reached soon, which will end the conflict and ensure that people in the region can live in peace. The people of Gaza have paid a high price for this war, losing loved ones, children, homeland, and property. We call on all interested parties and negotiators to take action to end this war. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes in the West Bank when the Israeli military entered refugee camps in the towns of Jenin and Tulkarm. The Israelis claim this is a repression of Iranian-backed groups, including Hamas and Islamic Jihad.
I think everyone is incredibly concerned about the current developments, and of course this has an implication on health.
At the same time, there are talks about the future of the Gaza Strip. Residents are returning to their homes, or what's left of them. Our home has been destroyed. If God permits, peace will hold. We will get a tent or a campsite because we are afraid for our children. We are already tired. It is cold. Our whole life revolves around the campfire. Israeli authorities stipulate that they will continue the military operation there in the event of a regrouping and resurgence of Hamas terrorists.
We must make sure that Gaza Strip will disarm totally the terrorist organization like Hamas and the Islamic Jihad will step down. These are the conditions for the day after. And I believe we will reach that. It's an option to reach there with political means, and if not, by the resume of military operations.
U.S. President Donald Trump shared an artificial intelligence-generated video on social media showing a vision of a future Gaza. The idea of a Middle East Riviera envisions that Palestinians from the Gaza Strip should be resettled in neighboring Arab countries. The U.S. president's concept has heated up the temperature of the discussion about the future of the Gaza Strip.